Okay, Hare Krishna, dear Vaishnavis. Welcome to our April Urban Devi. My name is Andrea, for those of you who don't know me. I co-host this with our dear Rukmini Walker. And today we have a very special guest. As always, we have very special guests every time. We have Urmila Devi Dasi, or Dr. Edith Best, as she's known, and she's going to be doing the topic today of career dharma. And just a little description about that for those of you who may not have seen it. If you're not sure what your nature is or how to find a matching career where your work is your dharma, you can gain an overview of the 9 principles of dharma in work so that you can move towards having a satisfying career that is the best expression of yourself. And just a little bit about Urmila Devi Dasi. She's circled the world over 20 times, delivering workshops and doing one-on-one coaching. Urmila has helped hundreds of people in over 1,000 cities and towns in dozens of countries find a harmonious balance between their spiritual practices and their livelihood, including finding meaningful success in careers that resonate with their own values and nature. So thank you so much, Urmila, for joining us today. And we also have her co-author with us today, and her name is Rukmini Devi Dasi as well. So not to be confused with our Rukmini Walker. And she was introduced to Bhakti Yoga in childhood and received 2 initiations into Bhakti Yoga lineage in 1991 and 2006. She holds a PhD in mathematics and works as a data scientist. And she began teaching about Bhakti Yoga publicly in 2013. And she has helped facilitate Columbus Bhakti Yoga since its inception in 2015. So she's a co-author of the book with Dr. Urmila, which is with Urmila, who is also Dr. Edith Best. And that's their book, Career Dharma, The Natural Art of Work, which is going to be appearing in 2023. So we get a little bit of a sneak peek, dear Vaishnavis. So now let's spotlight Urmila, and the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
The floor.
The virtual
screen.
floor.
The virtual floor. The screen. So Rukmini Datta is going to be available if you have questions during the presentation that you want to ask in the chat, she can answer those questions in the chat as we're going through. I will be ignoring the chat and she will be paying attention to it. All right, so we're going again, Andrea, until what time? 11:50.
So breakout groups will be about 11:50, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to do a very, very fast run through. This is just an overview. It's not in depth. We're just touching the surface. And if you feel we're not going deep enough, you're right. If you want to go deeply, then we would suggest that you get our book. We also plan to have a complete in-depth course. If you would like to get information about the upcoming book and course, you can put your information at this link. Or you can just take a picture of this handy dandy QR code, which will also take you to that link, and you can put in your information, and then we will let you know. You will not get an immediate boom reply. We're not Amazon, but you will get information when the book is released and when the full course is available. All right, now we're going to go on our run through. So I'd like you to imagine that your daily life has gradually come to include the practices and activities you've always dreamed of. You love the work you're doing, what you're producing, and how you're making a meaningful contribution. Your work is bringing you the kinds of prosperity that truly enrich you and that you joyfully share with others. So to achieve this, we're going to look at the ancient career dharma in 4 main areas, and this kind of expands. So the first is very, very personal. We identify our ideal career type and prosperity field. our career field and prosperity type. Now, once we have that, a lot of people say, well, that's all I need to do. No, not if you want to do the whole Dharma. Then you want to go a little broader and learn the secrets of making your work deeply meaningful. Then a little broader than that and progress toward Dharmic mastery. And then you can look at the whole system of livelihood, career economics for peace and prosperity. Now, these 4 expanding understandings of Dharma encompass 9 principles of career Dharma. These are 9 principles that exist every time there's a material creation in all the material universes. They are the basic principles of truth. And again, we're just going to be touching on them today. These are connecting our nature with our livelihood, advancing through life while nourishing our nature, extending our prosperity to others, ethical and meaningful work of value, delight in cherishing our prosperity and field of work, having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work, being above the shades of ego, maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields and competition within the fields, and all-inclusive sustainable prosperity. Now, putting together those 4 main areas with the 9 principles, we have this handy dandy thing. Here's our 4 areas, 1, 2, 3, 4. And here are our 9 principles, spelling, career, Dharma. Isn't that nifty? I think it's really nifty. All right, a little memory aid. Now we're going to go through these one section at a time. So first, let's go through the beginning section, ourselves. Understanding my prosperity type and career field. And this involves 2 principles. So let's look at the first one. Connecting our nature with our livelihood. That's principle 1. Now, how many of you know of cash-rich people who are unhappy? They actually have a poor life. I mean, maybe we've even had times in our life where we were cash rich, but life poor. I mean, all you have to do is read any news headline any day to find out about people who are cash rich, but their lives are poor. And conversely, we may all know of people who are cash poor, but have a very rich life. And maybe there's been times when we've been cash poor, but our life was rich. So we all know that prosperity doesn't fully equal cash. Now, we all like cash. We all need cash. I need cash. It's not that we don't need, even the Amish have to have some cash economy. But if we want to have prosperity, we would rather look at the 6 types of prosperity given in the Vedic literatures and really meditate on which of these we would like our work to give us. Now, we want to differentiate here. Our work often gives this kind of prosperity to others, and that's important. That's very important. But we're looking right now at what kind of prosperity we want our work to give to us. How am I going to have a rich life? By the way, Srila Prabhupada uses the term peace and prosperity 195 times. So there's the prosperity of Aishvarya, that's leadership. That's the prosperity of having people who follow you, who look up to you, who you can guide, who you can engage. And some people are really enlivened by that. Some people enjoy being a leader and helping others and guiding others and training others and engaging others. And other people like, nah, just work under somebody else or work by myself or just be part of a team. I don't really want that. Then there's the prosperity of Gyan. This is when our work involves always learning and gaining in wisdom. There are some kinds of work where in order to do the work nicely, you have to be constantly learning. There's a lot of other kinds of work that once you know the basic elements of the job, that's kind of it. You really don't need to gain that much more. So some people are innately curious and they always want their job to be filling them with knowledge as part of their job. And other people are like, that seems like a burden. Then there's virya. Some people have jobs that fill them with strength. Like my daughter runs a Bharatanatyam schools, and her work gives her strength and health. She can't do her work without doing vigorous exercise. Or someone who's working in a garden, working in construction. And other people, they want to be healthy. They may do exercise, but it doesn't have to come through their work. Their livelihood doesn't have to be providing them with virya. Then there's Shri. This is visual beauty, auditory beauty, gracefulness, charismatic leadership. So some people's work brings beauty into their life, either visual or auditory. Now, we're not talking about, again, providing beauty for others. We're talking about work that brings beauty into your own life, or charismatic leadership into your own life. And for other people, they really don't care if their lives are, their walls are blank. They don't listen to much music. It's just not very important to them that their form of work, their livelihood, is giving them Shri. Then there's Yasha. Yasha means you're famous for good deeds. You're not just famous. There's lots of famous people, but you're well known for your good deeds. Yasha implies community or family. So a lot of people, they want their work to provide them with a community, and a community who recognizes them, who acknowledges them. And other people, they really don't want that. They want to be out of the spotlight. They don't really care. They may even find it negative. Then there's the opulence of vairagya, freedom, equanimity. So some people want a job where they can work a flexible schedule, maybe where they can travel a lot. They have a lot of autonomy in deciding what they want to do, where they can live a very minimalist lifestyle. And other people really don't want that in their work. They want a strict schedule, and they want to be able to surround themselves with a lot of luxurious things. So most of us have at least one, sometimes two or three of these types of prosperity that we really need in order to feel that our life is rich. And the other ones we might, well, be nice if we have them, and some of them we might even not want to have. So we want to find a career that gives us the type of prosperity that is really meaningful for us. All right, another way of understanding our career type is to look at the 4 fields of work, which Krishna describes in Bhagavad Gita 4:13, Chaturvarnamaya Shrishtam. So Rukmini and I, Dr. Ruchira Datta, we call these the fields of artistry, ideas, resources, and government. We do not use Sanskrit terms for these because people already have certain ideas associated with these Sanskrit words, and some of those ideas may be erroneous. So one of the biggest questions we looked at is why does the Lord, why does Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita and throughout the Bhagavatam and throughout the Vedic literatures, why do they take the hundreds of thousands of different ways of earning a living and divide them into 4? Well, one reason is that certain specific careers may or may not be available. You can't really be a blacksmith anymore, and there were no computer programmers 200 years ago. But the main reason is that each of these has a different dharma. They have a different set of values, and the values contradict each other. So people always ask, can I be in more than one field? The answer is no. You're probably going to have more than one kind of prosperity that you need to feel rich, but you're only going to have one field. And that is because the innate values or dharma of that field are unique to that field and contradict the dharma of the other fields. Now, you might be in a field that particularly assists those in another field or has a lot of interaction with those in another field, but your own dharma and your own values are only going to be in one field. So again, we're going through this extremely briefly, and we do have also in-depth classes. And our book goes very, very much in depth with a lot of examples. Here we have the field of artistry. Artistry provides all the support, all the beauty, all the function in society. There's clearly defined objectives of excellence and usually clearly defined processes for achieving that excellence. People know what works, what doesn't work. People who love to work with the arts or service, something where we get to hone a craft, making something that people find useful or inspiring. And these people, the main important question that their work has to fulfill for them is my work adding beauty and support to the world? Now, everybody might want to add support, but those are the main questions that designate the values of those in this field. Am I adding beauty to the world? Am I adding support and functionality to the world? Okay, another field is the field of resources. These people are expanding wealth and profit. They're absorbed with how to use resources efficiently and effectively with the distribution of profits. There's much more abstraction in this field than in artistry. Concepts of an ideal worker in this field can vary considerably from one culture to another, and even within a culture. And measuring success in this field is going to have some variety within a culture and from one culture to another. The Bhagavatam describes these people as always thirsty, not like for water. But in other words, they always want to expand. This is the only field where they're generating the resources for society. People in other fields use those resources, move them around, redistribute them. This is the only field where they're creating them. And the main question that these people want to ask to know whether or not their work is successful is, do I have a sustainable, regenerative way of producing resources for myself and others? There's the field of government. Now, we're social creatures, and as soon as we're not in a very, very small group, we need some system of defense. We need some system of oversight, the group as a whole. Now, the main difference between this field and management like of a corporation is that in the field of government, the people are responsible for the interests of everyone in their domain, whereas if you're just running a business or a corporation, you're just responsible for that particular area. So it's not that, although these people are the leaders for society as a whole, there are leaders in all four fields. Now, not all of the people in the field of government work for a political government. Some may work for non-government organizations, NGOs, that do the kind of work that government does, making sure that people have clean water and food and good housing and medical care and good roads and things like that. One can also be in this field on a very small scale. So one might be the landlord of an apartment building, and that's like your little government that you're taking care of. Now, these are the people that are the protectors and the carers of society. They're like big parents. And they're nurturing all of society and protecting all of society. They're the arms of society. Now, in English, the word arms also means weapons, but arms are also, you know, how you're holding your baby, right? How you're protecting others. Now, these people collect the resources from artistry and resources, and then they redistribute them. Then there's the field of ideas. These are we should also say that in the field of government, the main questions that they ask to know whether or not they're successful in their work is my work increasing honor and justice, morals and ethics in society? Am I adding justice to society? Am I adding honor to society? Am I increasing ethics and morality in society? Okay, moving to the field of ideas. These are the people that provide wisdom, guidance, truth, and education, jobs in research, study, teaching, counseling, therapy, religious leaders. Now, these people can promote wisdom and ideas not only through words, they can promote them through mathematics. And interestingly enough, also through some of the fine arts. So there are musicians, painters, sculptors, dancers, actors, who are not in the field of artistry, but they're in the field of ideas. Now, it depends what their main motive is. For the people in the field of ideas, the main questions that they want answered by their work in order to feel that they have a satisfying career is, am I adding to the truth and wisdom of the world? And again, in artistry, their main questions are, am I adding to the beauty and support of the world? So if someone is writing songs about philosophy and truth, they're in the field of ideas. If they're writing songs about, I love my baby and she left me, I don't know when she's coming home, that's in the field of artistry. So some of us like to play with ideas, taking them apart, putting them together. We may like teaching with words, logic, math, and so forth. Now, we might mention that some people have hobbies in a field that they wouldn't want to work in all the time. So a lot of us have hobbies in the field of artistry. Maybe we like to make a beautiful garden in our backyard. Maybe we like to embroider, but we wouldn't want to do that 8 or 10 hours a day. So many people's hobbies are in another field, especially people tend to have hobbies in artistry. But we want to see what's our dominant interest. Now, it's also very important when understanding what is our field that Krishna says twice in the Gita, once in the 3rd chapter and once in the 18th chapter, don't do someone else's work. And in the 3rd chapter, he uses this word, bhayavaha. He says, don't go into someone else's path, even if it seems you're better at it than your own path. Now, one reason is that if we're in the wrong field of these 4 fields, then we're going to have to pretend to have a dharma or values that are different from our own. How long can we do that? I mean, even actors, they have to get out of character and go back to themselves. We will go back to ourselves. And again, Krishna says, bhayavaha, a vehicle of fear. Now, we found it very interesting that Krishna talks a lot about detached work and also talks a lot about doing the work according to your nature. When you do the work that's according to your own nature, you're getting internal, intrinsic satisfaction from your work. You feel like it's an expression of your own self. And so the money that you get, the external circumstances are not so important. When you're doing someone else's work that's not your own dharma, you're not getting that internal satisfaction. Therefore, one becomes much more dependent on the externals for satisfaction. And then working with detachment becomes extremely difficult. We want to make a very important distinction between dharmic expertise in one of these fields and being a beginner. The Shastra only describes for these 4 fields those who have dharmic expertise. But when we're trying to figure out what field we belong in, we want to look at our predilections, our inclinations, our propensities. Right? If you want to know whether or not you're a good runner, you don't want to just compare yourself to, the Olympic winners. But you want to look at your beginning propensities. So when we're trying to understand what field do I go into, we're looking at what are the qualities that indicate a disposition, that's your relationship between the potential worker. And, when we're thinking about what career to take up or a career change, sometimes our propensities don't really look like, the expert in that career. Like a lemon seed doesn't look a whole lot like a lemon tree. And one's got to be able to recognize the inclinations in their seedling form. And this brings us to principle 2, advancing through life while nourishing our nature. Now, people ask, can our nature change? And according to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita 3:33, he says, no, everybody will act according to your nature. You cannot repress it. So it is important to have people in our life who recognize our inclinations and propensities and train us in those, not only in the externals of the craft, but also in the Dharma. And there's some empiric evidence to indicate that people's inclinations and values for one of these 4 fields are at least evident by the age of 13. It's important to mention that some indication of our matching field in childhood and maybe even older if we're not trained properly, may be the kind of things we did that annoyed others. Now, you remember we have this, Krishna says you can't repress your nature, right? So if you have a child who doesn't know how to display their nature properly, they may just annoy people. So there's a story, you can see a story on YouTube of this guy who was always getting in trouble in school for making noise during class. He's always making noise during class, and he was always getting sent to the principal and getting in trouble with the teacher. And one day when he was 10, his teacher took him aside after class. He said, "Oh, I'm in trouble again." He said, "No, have some drumsticks. Learn to be a drummer." Learn to be a drummer. So he was able to recognize that this person has the propensity, and the man became a very famous drummer. When I was 3 years old, I got in a lot of trouble in preschool because instead of playing with the other kids, I was trying to teach the teachers how to teach. And the whole time I was growing up, I was always told, stop teaching, stop teaching, stop teaching. It wasn't until I was 24 and I met my mentor, Jyotirmayi, that I actually got trained and found out that I'm a natural teacher, and not only a teacher, but a teacher of teachers. Now, according to the Vedic literature, one has a cycle of life. So when one's young, one gets trained in one's career gets recognized, one gets trained in the prime of life, one has one actually works in one's career. In middle age, one retires and advises others in their career, and at the end of life, one gives up anything to do with career and prepares for the final journey. All right, we're now going on. We've taken care of matching our nature to our career. Now we're going to expand beyond that, and we're going to find real satisfaction and purpose in our work, besides just having work that's a great expression of ourself. So first, we're going to look at principle 3, extending our prosperity to others. This principle is very important in the Shastra. In fact, Krishna in the 18th chapter says that even great souls should not give up dana or charity. The Sanskrit word for a kind of wealth is bhaga, which comes from the root word bhaj, meaning to divide or share. So we start by sharing our wealth, at least with our spouse, with our children, maybe with the creatures that live outside our home. But this giving doesn't just mean cash. Again, our prosperity is not just cash. I'd like you to take a minute to look at this slide where we suggest ways of sharing our prosperity with others. So this is just a little hint. We go into much greater depth again in our book, but this gives you some idea of whatever prosperity you're enjoying from your work, you take that and share that with others. Okay, we're going to go on to principle 4 as far as finding satisfaction and purpose in our work. And this is doing ethical and meaningful work of value. So to do work that's ethical means that it's honest. In other words, we charge a fair price for the goods or services that we sell. If we have employees, we pay them fairly. So we're treating the customers fairly, we're treating the employees fairly. We're trying as far as possible to have a fair and honest price and care given to everybody down the line, all of the suppliers, everyone that we're serving. Now, of course, that may not be absolutely possible in 2023, but as far as it is possible. Then ethical and meaningful work of value. So we want to do work that really adds to people's life, to people's value. We shouldn't be doing work if we want to follow Dharma, then we don't want to do work that is harmful to people, like selling cigarettes or alcohol. And nor would we want to do work that is manufacturing needs, things that people don't really need, and we're trying to convince them that we need it. So our work should be honest, and our work should be of real value in order to actually have meaning for ourselves and to find a sense of purpose for ourselves, that I'm doing something honest and of value to the world. Now, value goes beyond just meeting people's needs. It goes also to what's motivating us. So most of us are in this cycle of frustration where we want to follow Dharma in order to gain artha or prosperity, so we can get karma or enjoyment. And then when we get frustrated with that, we want liberation. But all of that is within the material sphere. If we want to go above that to ultimate value, then we want our work motivated by love, love of God and love of all living beings. Now, along with this principle of doing ethical work of value, we want to turn again to this idea of not doing other people's work. Now, we touched on this in our first principle. We touched on this in our principle of making sure we're doing the right work, making sure we're not doing someone else's work as a general thing. But if we're really going to do work that's meaningful and valuable, we want to ensure that we're in our field. Now, again, we're going to go through this very quickly. We're just touching the surface. In our book and in our full course, we look at every possible wrong combination. Like if you have the inclination for government, but you work in ideas, you have the inclination for government, you work in resources, you have the inclination for government, you work in artistry, you have the inclination for resources, you work in government, and so forth. But here we're going to look at it just briefly. Let's look at the crossover between government and resources, the different values. So government is redistributing the people's own wealth, and resources is wealth creation. They're creating new wealth. They're taking things in the natural world and creating things that people can use out of them. And the main difference here is that resource people think that those in government are foolishly generous, and government people think those in resources are too profit-minded. Now, in order to work in resources, you have to be profit-minded. Remember, in resources, you want to have wealth that's sustainable and regenerative. Well, in order to be sustainable and regenerative, you've got to have profits coming in. It's like you got to save some seeds from the harvest to plant the next time, right? Whereas government, they're just going to give to everybody in a time of need. Resources, they're going to make sure they keep some. And so you have these two opposite values. Let's look at government and ideas. So both these people are concerned with long-range vision and whole systems. But people in the field of ideas, they can be researching things that don't apparently have immediate practical value. And those in government, everything's got to be practical. For people in ideas, they're going to think, oh, those decisions in government, they're too hastily arrived at. They're too harsh. And those in government, they're going to think those things, those idea people doing, they're just useless and foolish. Let's look at ideas and resources. So to people in the field of ideas, people in resources are going to appear really profit-minded and selfish. People in resources are going to think, people who have the nature of ideas are going to think work in resources is materialistic, basically, and self-centered. They don't really understand that these are the people who are providing all of the resources and that may have us eat and have clothes and medicine and everything like that. There's like a different set of ethics. The ethics of the field of ideas is you're doing like this detached work. And the ethics for the field of resources is I've got to make sure I can keep providing food for everyone. People who have the nature of resources, they're going to think it's actually unethical to spend money on pure mathematics. How does that feed anybody? And people in ideas are going to think it's unethical to be making a profit. You should just give everything away for free. Let's look at government and artistry. Government people want to expand. They want to protect more people, care for more people. People in artistry tend to be very self-satisfied. People in artistry tend to be satisfied if they have basic creature comforts in life. Now, both in government and artistry, they're externally focused. But still, you have this pull between being self-satisfied and wanting to expand and care for others. People in artistry are going to find that annoying. Why do I have to take care of all these? I'm just happy taking care of my family and my craft in my house. I don't want to take care of all this stuff. And people in government, if they have to work in artistry, they're going to feel confined, but I want more. And those things are going to be in conflict. All right, let's look at ideas in artistry. This is a cross that the Shastra says absolutely should not be done. Now, what's interesting is that both people who have the predilection for ideas and those who have the predilection for artistry tend to be very self-satisfied. They tend not to be ambitious, whereas those in resources and government tend to be ambitious. In artistry, again, the satisfaction is in the externals. Do I have a warm house? Do I have nice food to eat? Do I have a nice romantic partner? Do I have a job that I like? Am I expert in my craft? Then they're satisfied. People in ideas, however, are self-satisfied because they're satisfied with the workings of the mind. So the people in ideas don't really care about, do I have a comfortable home and do I have a nice partner and they don't care about that as long as they're satisfied within. So it's a very different kind of inner satisfaction that's actually contradictory for each other. And those in artistry, they're providing all the pleasure for society. Think about the people in artistry, they're providing all the salt and spicing in food. But people in ideas, they're providing detached wisdom. They're like the eyes of society. And you know what? You don't want to put salt and spices in your eyes. Let's look at the crossover between resources and artistry. Now, both of these fields deal with the practical needs in society, but those in artistry tend to focus on craft, quality, and the satisfaction of a job well done. Those in resources focus on profit, expansion, and quantity. If somebody with the mentality of resources works in artistry, they will tend to automate it. They'll make it into a factory. If somebody with the nature of artistry goes into resources, they won't have the predilection for sustainable regenerative wealth. They won't be looking at the big picture. And therefore, they may make money by polluting the environment. All right, now that we've taken care of connecting our own nature with our propensity type and our career field, and now that we have work that's meaningful and full of purpose, now we're going to go out a little further. We're going to progress to Dharmic mastery. Now here we have 3 principles. So let's look at the first one, principle 5, to delight in cherishing our prosperity and field of work. So not only do we know what our prosperity type and field of work is, but we're going to be cherishing it. Now, all the 6 types of prosperity, they're all gifts from the earth and the universe. They're actually all expansions of Lakshmi Devi or Srimati Radharani. None of these kinds of prosperity do we create out of nothing. So we want to cherish them so that they will still be in abundance. We don't want to cut off the head of the goose who laid the golden egg or chop off the tree that's giving us fruit. In a general way, everyone, it means that we take care of our physical body, we take care of our mind, we make sure we do things that bring us joy and do what we do joyfully. We take care of those who we work with, those who work under us, those who work over us. We deal suitably with everyone with kindness, mercy, and compassion, with friendship, with respect, with civility. We make sure that we take care of the environment, that our work doesn't harm the land, the sea, the sky. In our book, we look at specific ways of cherishing whatever kind of prosperity we enjoy. And again, I'm just going to take a minute and you can take a look at this slide. And similarly, if you could also take a minute now to look at ways of cherishing our field. We're going to go on to principle 6 as far as progressing to Dharmic mastery. And this is having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work. Now, in this regard, we particularly reference Bhagavad Gita 3:16, where Krishna says, Evam pravaritam chakram. And Srila Prabhupada talks about this in a lecture on this verse. He says, now this circle, this moving circle, is just like the potter moves the circle to make production. You have seen. Similarly, we have to move the circle. Circle means it is meant for moving. So anyone who does not move the circle of activity, then his life is full of sin. Now, nature naturally moves. Nature, the plants, the animals, they take from nature and they give back. We humans need to make a specific effort to give back to nature, to give back to the divine, to give back to Krishna. And this can be done in many ways. Every human society has some system of religion, some system of spirituality, whereby one is regularly having celebrations of giving back to the divine, however one understands the divine, whether as the universal form, as the Brahman, as the Paramatma, or as Bhagavan Sri Krishna, whether one is doing that through Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyan Yoga, or Bhakti Yoga. And ultimately, we should have every moment of our life be a ceremony of connection. But at least on a regular basis, we want to have those ceremonies if we're progressing to Dharmic mastery in our work. The 7th principle, as part of progressing to Dharmic mastery, is to work above the shades of ego. So as conditioned souls, we are beset by tamas, sattva, and rajas. Tamas makes us feel, yeah, I'm a good person because, I'm not ambitious. I just take care of my family and my life. And, I just like to do whatever's easiest. And sattva is, I'm a good person because I'm in balance. I'm in harmony. I'm very spiritual. And rajas is, I'm a good person because I'm changing the world and I'm ambitious and I work hard. So we don't want to do our work in any of these stages of ego. Think of rajas as a dark curtain over your window, tamas as a translucent glass, and sattva as a clear window. But all of these represent the dark side of our work. We don't want to pull from these shades of ego for our work or be identifying with them. Rather, we want to work above them. And here's an example. We were talking about giving in charity as our 3rd principle of career dharma. So in tamas, you're giving to the wrong person at the wrong time, the wrong place, or you're giving to the right person, but like, here, take this charity. In rajas, you're giving to the right person, the right place, but you're like, I'm going to get some back, right? Or I really wish I didn't have to give. I'm giving this just because my boss told me to. In sattva, you're doing, I'm giving this because it makes me feel so good and harmonious inside. And in bhakti, you're saying, I'm giving this to please Krishna. One can also look at the shades in the work itself, right? When we're shaded by tamas, we're disengaged, deceitful, lazy, morose, procrastinating. When we're working in rajas, we're attached. We're really affected by joy and sorrow, always buffeted by happiness and distress. When we're in sattva, we're without attachment, great determination, without wavering. But we want to be above all of those, nicely explained in Bhagavad Gita 3:30, where Krishna tells us 3 things not to do and 3 things to do. 3 things not to do. Don't try to enjoy the 6 kinds of prosperity on a merchant type of mentality in material consciousness. Don't think you're the owner of anything. And don't be lethargic. 3 things to do. Dedicate our work to Krishna, to the ultimate source. Always be aware that I'm a spiritual being and work according to my nature. Right, we've gone from connecting ourselves with our nature, having work that's purposeful and meaningful for ourselves, and progressing to Dharmic mastery. Now we're going to look at the whole system. And there's 2 principles in looking at the whole system. This first one, principle 8, is maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields, and competition within the fields. So we want to have cooperation. People and ideas, train and guides. Government approves licensing and accreditation, may also provide venues and facilitators, right? People in resources, they organize, direct, and distribute the flow of money, materials, and energy. People in artistry have joint endeavors with those in the other fields. Each field acts as a check and balance on the other fields. People and ideas, they hold those in government to the rule of law. Government regulates through laws. Resources regulates through the throw of money, and artistry through their numbers. Let's look now at competition within the field. So there should be cooperation between one field of another and competition within the field. And Prabhupada said, competition gives life. I mean, in theory, doing our best is always worthwhile for its own sake. But in practice, when we have an opponent that encourages us to do our best, focuses our mind, invigorates our efforts, seeing others do great things can remind us of our own potential and inspire us to probe the edges of our own abilities. Now, this should be sportsmanship type of competition. It shouldn't be something based on envy or predatory. Just like you go to the jewelry district, there's a lot of jewelry shops. You go to the fashion area, there's a lot of fashion shops. But the idea is that this should be a caring, exciting, and respectful competition. Competition in artistry has led to so many inventions that ease and inspire our lives. Plastic masterpieces of art, architecture, and music, higher quality of trade and craft work. Competition in resources. It's what enabled our population to come to 8 billion while making sure most people have their physical needs met. Efficient and effective ways of transporting supplies all over the world. Technology to jump forward. Competition in government. It's enabled most of us in the world to live safe from criminals and aggressors, a variety of public services, all different types of political systems that people can experiment with. Competition in ideas leads to sound and coherent philosophies, theories, worldviews, and religions. Scientists competing enlarge our state of knowledge. Competition between religious and traditional groups have helped us to enhance or revive the purity of our traditions and also to adjust to changing circumstances. And our last principle, principle 9, within this whole system for peace and prosperity, is to have all-inclusive, sustainable prosperity. Modern economics has been divorced from the land. We live on a finite earth with finite resources, and any kind of livelihood for the human beings has to be based on an overall system that is sustainable to provide prosperity for everyone, not just a few at expense of the other. So we looked at these 4 areas, identifying our ideal career field and prosperity type, learning the secrets of making our work deeply meaningful, progressing towards Dharmic mastery, and the whole system for peace and prosperity. And within these 4 groups, we have the 9 principles: connecting our nature with our livelihood, advancing through life while nourishing our nature, extending our prosperity to others, having ethical and meaningful work of value, delight in cherishing our prosperity and field of work, having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work, above the shades of ego, maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields and competition within the fields, and all-inclusive sustainable prosperity. Again, if you'd like more information, please sign up for our mailing list. You will not immediately get an email, but you will be on our list to find out about our very soon to be produced book and more extensive course.
Thank you so much, Urmila. This is amazing. I'm kind of blown away by all the details, and you could tell everybody was trying to capture all the information. So now, Vaishnavis, we're going to move into our breakout groups. And I'm just going to briefly mention the breakout questions before I pause the recording. For those who will be watching this later on YouTube. So our breakout questions are, which one of the 9 principles of career Dharma do you feel would help you most in your life right now? And I believe if Rukmini Devi Dasi, if she could post those principles again in the chat, that would be helpful. I will also be posting the questions and those principles in our Urban Devi WhatsApp groups for you to be able to view while you're in your breakout groups. And also what field resonates with you. So please take a look, and I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. This is our reflections and Q&A section. So please feel free to either lift your virtual hand, or you can also write your questions in the chat to share, or any reflections from your group. So don't know if anybody would like to start. Oh, Patricia, yes. Would you like to start? Please unmute yourself and get started.
Hi, thank you. First, I want to say how appreciative I am of this session. It was exactly where I needed to be today. So just briefly, my background is in healthcare marketing and project management, and I did that for many years while also being a caregiver for my mom. And when she passed away in 2014, I left that to kind of explore, who am I without this caregiver label? And that led me to train as a health coach, as an interspiritual minister. And what I was sharing in the group is I absolutely love, my heart was so filled, and I felt such a deep satisfaction with doing that work with women, helping them be healthy, connect with a spiritual life. But I was not making money to pay my bills. And so I am now back in a regular job, and I feel so miserable. So this is my struggle. I feel like it's a fight between my inner joy and peace and having the finances that I feel like I need. So this exploration was really helpful to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia, for sharing so openly and seeing how this all connected to you. So I see that Mahalakshmi has her hand up as well. Would you like to share?
Okay. I've been in the same team as Patricia. So anyway, we were talking about a crisis that we experienced in a specific moment. I did. And that was when my kids grew up, and my service in management of the farm where I'm staying right now was over. And then I found, what is my contribution in life? I was in such a crisis. And it was then when I already had met her, but it was that moment when Urmila Devi came into my life. And I was so happy because we were traveling together, and I was translating for her in Spain. We were traveling around. I had invited her, although I didn't know her much at that moment. And for me, it was just, wow, this is perfection in my life. I am just repeating into our language, into giving an opportunity to persons who cannot understand English-speaking language to understand these important matters. So for me, that was perfection, to engage my ability in a way that is most beneficial to others. And for me, that was a revelation in my life. And since then, I am engaging mainly in this, in translations, and also, although now with the pandemics went a little bit behind, but producing Prabhupada's books into audios and maybe other stories as well that we have there in the scriptures. So that was a revelation. So I really recommend to get into understand what is our nature and be able to maintain and survive and live by that and being engaged in that way.
Thank you so much, Mahalakshmi. And as a native Spanish speaker, I just want to give my pronouns and thank you to you for doing that service for our community. It's so needed and so special. Thank you so much. And I see that Madhu Devi has her hand up, and I believe she is coming to us live from Vrindavan. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm like, no, because I'll smudge off them. Hare Krishna, Dharma pranams, Urmila Devi, and everyone, Hare Krishna. I guess I'm wondering like how to find the balance, because like I'm choosing like a Dharma career. I do publishing. I think people know me. I'm from Devi Street Books. But like I fund the whole thing myself, and you know, I want to surrender and just be like, this is going to be my only income, and like Krishna's gonna provide for me, and like incorporate in my chanting this kind of Sharanagati, and like Krishna's my only maintainer. But I really struggle with it like every day, and I somehow still have roof and food and prasadam and association. But like, to be honest, I don't like, I feel like I'm like giving my everything, and like people, even devotees, are like not as supportive as I would like hope them to be. Of course, I try not to have expectation, but like I find even like all of my Sikh friends like go out of their way to come to my book table and buy my book and read their book to their children, and like, you know, and that's when I feel like very inspired, like when people who aren't devotees are like even show more compassion. So I don't know, like how can I find this kind of like gentle surrender to everyone, and like be more humble? And I understand like, yes, sometimes in the mode of Instagram tamas because it's just part of the nature. Like I was joking with my group, like, you know, this is just not the age where we just like put a sari over my head anymore. It's like you know, I have to, it's not like I want to be a public figure, but it's just part of what I have to do. So how can I just balance all this, still surrender to Krishna, get to do my Dharma, so I don't have to work in a karmi job again? And yes.
Rukmini, what are your thoughts?
Request.
Yes, and I actually was just I just put some advice in the chat for Patricia also, and I think that it's probably applicable to many people. So we talk in our book about some avenues. We sort of touch briefly on avenues for transitioning gradually. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be an all or nothing decision, because it's based on one's circumstances, like how big of steps one is able to take at any given time. And on the other hand, we're also but we fully support working according to one's nature. So if you're finding that you're not, you know, getting support, you know, from others, you know, at least know that, you know, we're cheering you on, and we're working on also, you know, how else, you know, what other concrete options we can offer to support people in that, like, you know, more kind of, you know, consulting or you know, our course and so forth. But yes, so it you know, I don't know how personal you want to get just on this public Zoom, but yes, there are options for getting and yes, other people may not always understand, because, you know, career dharma is not necessarily very well known even among the devotee community yet. So hopefully with this publication we'll help people to provide that support. And so, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I was just thinking that part of the mentality of those in the field of ideas are not being that concerned with the externals of life. It's part of the values. And I think they're really kind of parallel lines, that when you're doing work in the field of ideas, your main satisfaction is, materially speaking, in your mental and intellectual work. Now, in all four fields, to work above the shades of ego mean that you're working for the satisfaction of the divine. You're working for the satisfaction of Krishna, and that there's this trust that I'm going to get the prosperity that is due me and that the Lord wants to give. At the same time, there's a lot of different ways of earning a living within each of the four fields. And so if there's a particular way of working in, if you're in the field of government and there's a particular way of working in the field of government that's not netting you enough money to buy food, then you want to look for another specific job in the field of government. That's the point. So not to go out of your field. If you're in the field of resources and some way isn't generating enough income again for you to pay your rent, then you want to look for something else that's within that same field, but you don't want to go outside of that field. Does that help at all? Madhu, does that help? And everybody's got to trust that they're being maintained by Krishna. Everybody should be working above the shades of ego. And so everybody should be trusting that I'm being maintained by the divine, because everybody is being maintained by the divine. It's an acknowledgement of what's already there. You're not really being maintained by your paycheck, even if you work at a job and get a paycheck. So it's being comfortable with what is and saying that I'm being maintained by my source. And there's some trust that each of these fields has a place in the universal body. So some trust that the personality of the form of the universe, as Kunti calls Krishna, the personality of the form of the universe wants those of us that are heart muscle cells to be in the heart, and wants those of us who are stomach cells to be in the stomach, wants those of us who are brain cells to be in the brain. That's the desire of our source. I mean, I want my brain cells to be in my brain. I don't want them to be in my lungs. That would be awful. And so if we're doing work that's the best expression of ourselves, that we will get help. That means that our desires are in sync with Krishna's desires. Throughout the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, work according to your nature, work according to your nature. So when I say, yeah, I want to do that, then that means automatically I'm in sync with reality. And then the ultimate reality will help us. But again, one may need to shift within one's field. And I've seen that. Sometimes it means people are working in the wrong field. I've seen people think, well, I should just go out and chant on the streets and that God will supply me with my food. But that wasn't they weren't working according to their nature. So sometimes that's the problem. Sometimes we're a lung cell trying to be in the heart. And other times it may be that we need to shift within the field. Maybe we need to see, okay, what else in my field is something that I could do that would generate enough income. Unfortunately, we can't necessarily get everybody in the world to appreciate what we're doing, whatever it may be. No, sometimes there may be a shift. Also, another thing one may want to study is how to find those people who do appreciate you and who are willing to compensate you for it. And I just took a 12-week course in designing courses. And one of the things they emphasized was how to find your people, how to find people who do appreciate, how to find those people who do resonate with you. And part of doing that may be fine-tuning your own message, fine-tuning who your, for lack of a better term, market is, who's your audience, who are you trying to reach? And these kind of skills can be learned, identifying who your audience is, and then how to approach that audience in a way where they're going to say, wow, this really meets my needs, and I want to pay for it. I want to give something for it. So those are skills that can be learned, how to do that. A lot of that is a question of packaging and presenting. How do you present yourself? How do you present what you're doing? Are you presenting what you're doing according to what you think people want to hear, or are you presenting what you're doing according to what you know people really need and what people are really going to resonate with? And then are you going to the right people? Now, generally, when you do that, then you'll find that everything works.
Great. Thank you so much, Urmila and Rukmini, for that insight. And we do have time for one more question. And there's a question in the chat from Priya. So Priya, if you feel comfortable asking your question, you can unmute yourself, and then we will have enough time, remember, to have Rukmini Walker at the end kind of give us our announcements and close up our meeting. So Priya, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Hello. My question is just that I used to find it really difficult to just sit down and study and get a lot of reading, that kind of work. I used to struggle with that. But now that I've moved into actually putting it into practice, it's a lot easier. So I'm just wondering if the reason that I'm frustrated or a bit unsettled is because I'm not doing the work that I need to do properly, or if it's because I'm not in the right field for me.
Well, that's a very difficult question to answer without knowing a lot more about you and your situation. In other words, are you in our area 1, or are you in our areas 2 or 3? So in our area 1, it's figuring out what is the right field to be in, what's the right type of propensity. In area 2, it's about having your work be purposeful and meaningful. And in area 3, it's attaining Dharmic mastery. So you really can do some introspection, first of all, to ask, am I in the right place? Am I in the right place for me? Is the work I'm doing an expression of myself? And then if the answer is no, you go back and work on that. And the answer is yes, then you want to work on the other things. You want to work on principles 3 through 7. Things like, am I sharing with others? Is my work honest? Is my work really adding value? Am I including celebrations in my work? Am I working above the shades of ego? Am I working as a soul? You want to ask those sort of questions then in order to really do your work dharmically. And I think it's very good that you brought this up, because there's a lot of people who really don't know what they should do, or they don't think they're in the right place. And then there's people who are in the right place, but they don't know how to work in that place in a way that is dharmic. But again, without doing, one-on-one coaching, I'm really, I think that's hard to answer. Rukmini, do you want to add anything to that?
I think that you put it very well, and we would need to have more information than there's time for here. So more kind of one-on-one consulting to give a more specific answer.
Perhaps what we could do, again, Rukmini and Urmila, is to post the link for people to be able to sign up for your email list. So Vaishnavis, you can sign up for their email list, and then that way you can continue to follow up with them, find out when their book is coming out, and then also just be more in contact with them. And we'll also find out from Urmila and Rukmini what are the best ways to share in our WhatsApp group their contact information, so that if anybody wants to reach out either through their websites or other means of connecting. So I don't know if we have time for one more question. Rukmini Walker, did you want to share anything before if we take another question?
Yes, please take the other question, and then I'll share about next month.
Okay, great. So Mala, you had your hand up. Thank you so much. Would you like to unmute and ask your question, please?
Sure. Thank you so much, Andrea. Hare Krishna, everyone. My question is, what if you really enjoy the work that you do? Like you feel like it very much aligns with who you are. I've been working for this nonprofit organization for about 4 years now, but what has essentially happened is that I started basically some of the people that I work with are very toxic, and that has essentially affected the way I work and the way I think about the organization and just overall my well-being, and I was wondering if there was a way that I could, so I'm considering leaving. So I was just wondering if there was a way that I could balance the two, because I've really been trying since the beginning and it's been difficult, because these people are a little bit higher up than me. So they have a little bit more power. And I feel like if I were to be vocal about the situation, nothing would actually get done because it is a nonprofit. And you know what I mean? We are each other's crutches. So yeah, so that's just something that I'm struggling with because it's gotten pretty bad. Because it's so subtle as well, so I was just wondering if you had any advice on how to kind of deal with that.
It sounds like the principle that's a problem for you is the cherishing one, cherishing our prosperity and field of work. That's what it sounds like. So it sounds like you know your prosperity type, you know your field of work, and you're doing work that's ethical and that's meaningful. But you're in a situation where other people are not cherishing what they're doing and cherishing each other. Is that a correct understanding?
Yes. Like the people, so I'm not in it for the money, whereas the people are. So there's some people that are, and that's, bothersome.
All right, well then they may be working in the wrong field. Sounds like they're out of their field, because whenever anyone's in it for the money, that means they're into it for externals. See, even people who are naturally in the field of resources and are very inclined to make money and to keep expanding money, their mood is to provide prosperity for society. That's their mood. Their mood is to provide sustainable, regenerative prosperity for society, not just to
Those
make
with
money.
dharmic expertise.
Yes, thank you, Rukmini. Yes, those who have dharmic expertise in the field of resources. So then the question for you, Mala, it's Mala, yes?
Yes.
Is to ask, is it possible for me in this environment to work on cherishing my prosperity type and field of work, regardless of what my colleagues are doing? Can I, as an individual, do that aspect of dharmic work? Or do I need to relocate myself to do similar work with other people who are rightly situated? And I can't answer that question for you, but that is the main question. Rukmini, do you have some other insight on this?
I don't have additional insight, but I would just say that we're aware that many people face this kind of situation, and it's one of the reasons that one of the impetuses behind producing this book, Career Dharma, which is for a very wide popular audience to go beyond even those who are just interested in Bhakti Yoga, is because it's helpful for everyone. The more people who cherish the field and who follow these principles. It's not just necessarily for those who are already on the path of divine love.
Great. Thank you so much, Urmila and Rukmini Devi Dasi. So Urmila Devi Dasi and Rukmini Devi Dasi for this amazing talk. And just as before we segue into Rukmini Walker, who will be finishing our time together, just a reminder, in the chat, we put links to our Urban Devi WhatsApp groups. So I know that a lot of you still have thoughts and ideas that you want to share about today's Sangha. So you can continue the discussion in those WhatsApp groups. So please join us there. And Rukmini Walker.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is so practical. And please let us know when the book is out so we can share the information so all of us can get the book and maybe take your course as well. Really looking forward to it. So I wanted to also share that please note on your calendars, our next Urban Devi session in May is going to be May 21st, Sunday again, same time. And our presenter will be a therapist named Danya Rico. She's a family therapist who lives in Florida. And her title is, and where do I have it? Self-Care and the Sacred Feminine. So she says, a little description: this interactive session will be an exploration of Bhakti principles regarding caring for our mind, body, and spirit. Together, we will deepen our understanding of our own sacred feminine nature as a way of creating a spiritual paradigm for self-care. This session will integrate practical tools, tips, and resources to upgrade your personal wellness, and will also include a question and answer portion. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Urmila and Rukmini. This was so practical. I think we're all very, very inspired to get the book as soon as possible. When's it coming out? What's the estimated time of arrival? Any prediction here at all?
May.
May.
I noticed Urmila has muted herself because I'm there's
sometime in
previous
May.
work to do.
Okay, sometime
Yes.
in May, we can look forward to receiving this book and maybe taking your course. Thank you so much for being here. This was fantastic. I'm so grateful.
And the book will be available on Amazon. It'll be in print and electronic. And we will also be having, probably not immediately, but we'll also have an audiobook out.
Wonderful.
And-
So Career Dharma on Amazon sometime in May.
Yes, and not just Amazon, various ebook purveyors, and we're also planning to have it through Ingram Spark so that you can order it through a bookstore if you like.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. So grateful to you for spending your time teaching us, and many, many prayers for many sales of this book going everywhere. I think it's practical for everyone. We all need it. Thank you very, very much. Thank you all for joining us here today.
Thank you for inviting us and letting us share this.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yes.
Wonderful
Thank
to
you all.
meet you all. Thank you very,
Thank you very much.
grateful. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.